for attrition are part-time students who are working full-time and going to school part-time. The points that came up yesterday about not only maximizing work-study, but maximizing campus employment opportunities, I would think is huge. There are some schools, and I can give you one, Northwest Missouri State, I believe, is one. The percentage of their students that they manage to employ is phenomenal. Even University of Minnesota is good. These might be models. I don't know the intricacies of how they do that. But as George said yesterday, if we can keep them on campus, keep them involved, and the mentoring that can occur on campus as well, minimizing commute. Anytime we can keep them close and handle this financial. Now, could someone tell me, oh, here's my notes. I was going to ask, sometimes I'm enable Tom to help me, and I was going to do that. And then 4.3, cost of college perceived as outweighing the benefits of college. Now, I'm concerned about, all the research I read about how particularly low-income families get nervous about the debt. They need some coaching there and some help. That this is different than debt. It's still debt. But can you say there is good debt and bad debt? Some debt is better than other debt? That the debt we're talking about is an investment. It's like an annuity. I don't know what the term would be. In the long run, it's going to pay you back. It's not like the debt for purchasing other products. And I'm not seeing that's clear in the minds of our students sometimes or their families. Can we go at that? And maybe here's where alums, we could give them the numbers, but show them the success stories, that it was a bit of a sacrifice. And I'm not trying to minimize the sacrifices they have to make, but that it's short-term pain for long-term gain. And then 4.3b, this is true of all students, low income, high income. Maybe it's the same thing about the frontal lobe or nothing. I got students, I have to be honest with you, some of them are not wealthy students. The decisions they make with their money. I don't want to sound like an old, talking about these kids today, but do you need new wheels now? Do you really need new wheels now? A disturbing trend I'm finding is using financial aid as sort of like as educational welfare. I'm stunned. They get that check and then they're gone. Can we do anything about them? Is it a policy issue? I'm raising these questions in hopes that we'll have some time at least to come back if you'd like, and any insights you have. And then the last one is organizational issues. And what I'm saying here is, we can have the way we're structured, our policies, our way of doing administration, it could be student-centered or institution-centered. Class scheduling is my best example. Faculty, and again, I'm a faculty member, we love our academic freedom, and that includes scheduling classes whenever the heck we want. That's convenient for us. And some of these delays to graduation we're seeing nationally are not the students' fault. It's not that they're screwing up and taking courses without any plan. Sometimes they just can't get the courses they need when they need them. And that's because we're making schedules that are faculty-centered, not student-centered. And I know this is going to take bold leadership, because you've heard about faculty. It's like herding cats to try to get them on board on anything. But this is a big one. And we can continue with that. But and these policies in some states force them to declare a major early. That will do it. I'm really, these are kinds of these structural organizational policy decisions that I'm wondering we need to, I guess the first question is this policy really student-centered that's going to drive persistence or success? Are we doing this for institutional convenience or self-service or for profit? I think George referred to that. This is a money, even campus bookstores I'm really concerned about. They're driving up. And frankly, universities make money from that deal. It's not the old campus. These are outsourced. This is becoming more clear to me as I understand, as I'm writing more and dealing with publishers. I always thought it was the publishers who were the problem. All the bells and whistles, and some of it they argue is the incredible markup that bookstores get. And I said, well, why would you even have a bookstore? Well, the university profits from those markups. These are little subtle things. And I know if you're at a meeting, you're not going to be the most popular person on campus when you raise these issues. But that's what I mean by organizational structures, policies, little things that are in place that, and you know how policies are. Once they get established, it's like a runaway train. It's really hard to derail them. but may need to look at. And you know, to be complete and to be perfectly candid, if I had time, I might have added a sixth factor, which I would call ecological, maybe. Campus environment. I was doing a retention conference in Providence in June, and I noticed this. It was just his name. His name is Carney Strange. Has anybody heard of Carney Strange? Yeah, I just thought that was the coolest name. So then I got a book by him, and his whole thing, as you probably can articulate better than me, is how things are laid out. Is the campus conducive to staying? We want them to keep on campus. Is signage good? Do they know where to go? Do they have a lounge that would attract them to stay on campus? You know, the little ecological things, the buildings, the classrooms, comfort level. Now, I've never seen this directly tied to retention, but intuitively, I think there's a connection there, and that would be missing. If you wanted a complete framework, to be candid with you, if I had another 2 weeks, I probably would have worked in some stuff, but I didn't quite get through Carney Strange's book, but I just love to say his name. Anyway, I wanted to mention that. And you've heard about creating welcoming learning spaces, these sort of one-stop success centers, learning commons. If we want social integration, how does the environment, the campus ecology, affect some of the points we've made before, community and collaboration? So those are the big 5 or 6. And here's my last point, and I'm going to shut up, and that will give us about 10, 15 minutes for, is that all right, Aaron? Please cut me off. I don't want to back everybody up. The last page there, I guess what I'm arguing is it's not only what we do, but when we do it. You see the timeline? That might be there. And I picked the first year because that's the one, you hear the term front-loading. That is the year that is so critical, or being proactive. What if we, from a very pragmatic standpoint, were to lay out from what could we do earliest to latest on a timeline from summer bridge? Some would argue that when do we start calling it retention as opposed to recruitment? What's the term yield in admissions? What does that mean? How many? What's yield again? I'm sorry? How many show up? Who we think are going to show up, right? Who have applied? Do they actually matriculate? Yes. Yeah. That actually matriculate. Sometimes there's a big drop there. They call it summer melt. What could we do over the summer to that? So summer bridge, summer intervention programs, first year experience. And I want to have you talk, but notice a big point to me is that most first year experience programs end up being first term programs. They have the course. When do we lose most students? Between the end of the first year and the start of the second year. We've got to do some backloading, is what I have a little paper on this. If that's interesting to you, I'll send it. We got to do something in the second half of that first year to bridge the second year. That's where we lose it. Back to my point of re-recruiting the sophomore class. My son was one of those peer ambassadors, or he's emailing and sending postcards to incoming students. I'd like to do the same if we could simulate it. I know there may be money involved, but sometimes money is just a matter of priorities. If we're going to re-recruit the sophomore class, can we use some of the same strategies that we use to combat summer melt and to convert to yield, to create yield, that we're using now, that admissions is using for retention? The problem here is organizational. I've talked to admissions people about that. That's not what I'm paid to do. You know what I'm saying? We've got these enrollment management things. I don't know if you have that at school, where enrollment management is recruitment and retention. Whenever they seem to be pulled together, and it may be different in Kentucky, the person in charge there always seems to be judged more by the recruitment than the retention. I could never get our admissions director, who her new title was enrollment management, she'd always report the stats on the incoming class, but not report the stats as on the returning sophomore class. And part of it, I can't blame Nina, was because the president was so concerned about recruitment. Enrollment management is R squared, recruitment times retention. So this is yet another one of those organizational issues that we needed. The mindset, if we lose so many, wherever that year is, I'm just guessing, in most places it's first to second, let's take that same aggressive mindset that we put to recruiting those students to bringing them back. Questions? And I know I threw a lot at you, and here's a book by Carney Strange. I'm so impressed. You're ahead of me. Tell you, these Kentuckians are proactive. I know I threw a lot at you guys, and I really wish we had a half hour instead of 15, but did anything jump out at you? Surprise, surprise, Larry's got some input here. Please, Larry.
The timeline actually needs to start a lot earlier. If you plot by month, by socioeconomic status, how the applications come in, and then look at when the FAFSAs go in, many of the poorest students are missing deadlines, so that when I looked at it, our first cutoff is October. We only have 45% of minority applications in by then. By the time the first financial aid packages, some of the students think they have to have their 1040 for FAFSA. There's a lot of education you can do before they even enroll, to get them to get applications. You can calculate that some students will lose $8,000 or $10,000 in need-based aid by getting everything in late.
What would be a strategy to redress that? Have you done anything in Florida State to cut into that dilemma?
The best strategy is to start on FAFSA in November by going around and getting the students to set up accounts, get everything ready, then you go back the first week in January. So you can do churches, community centers, it has to be weekends, Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, gets FAFSA. High school counselors are slammed, but you can start reminding them in April that the next October is the deadline. You can start getting things in earlier and earlier. And if you track it, you can see where the weaknesses are and then have a strategy in that district. You can send people into that district to have workshops.
Great strategy, thanks. So my timeline, next time I revise that, I'm going to push that first arrow up. It starts even in the high school. And of course, Kentucky is one of their agenda, is this Peace 16 collaboration. And certainly your strategy, Larry, is consistent with one of the missions and something that Kentucky is getting some national attention about. You've had a conference here. How long ago was that, Aaron, on that Peace? A month ago. That was very well attended. And I'm happy your state's getting some recognition and may start serving as a model. Larry's idea is very congruent with that mission. Please help me here. Even if it's to have mercy on me so I'm not a sacrificial lamb looking for input. Any ideas, thoughts, concerns that came to mind, issues on your campus? It doesn't have to be restricted to this session. You've been sitting for, 5 hours yesterday, and then you were stuck with me now for an hour and a half. A lot of stuff has been processed. Do you see any patterns, gaps, perhaps, in what we talked about? And can I ask your name? It's personal validation. This is a big thing, as you who you are, what you do, and where you do that thing.
I'm Benton Shirey from Eastern Kentucky University. I'm the director of advising there. My question goes along with the curriculum. We talk about helping students to decide early, to really be engaged with their curriculum, but we don't give them any courses in that core content, usually in the first or second semester. They may have introductory courses, but in some majors, they may not even get into their core until the sophomore year. So if we want students to engage us, we have to engage them and use the curriculum to do that. So why don't we front load more core courses in the first year?
Great idea. Here's one of those institutional convenience. Here's a faculty issue. How do I, as a faculty member, measure my success? Is it hanging out with first-year students, offering courses to first-year students? No. I was at a school in California. Frankly, it was the biology department. They were losing a lot of students. And, they actually were paying, I hate the word consultants, rather, I can't wear the suit, sorry. And I was an advisor, I guess. They asked me to come in and my first question, it was something you would have asked. Well, who's teaching your intro courses? And do you have any hands-on core courses early? And of course, they had all their adjuncts, and adjuncts can be great teachers, but they're just not around as much. And so it's not surprisingly they were losing. He was trying this, the chair was reserving all the best teachers and the most appealing courses for those upper division students, and they were wondering why they were losing those who were initially declared as biology majors. So this is clearly a retention issue. And when you look, I think I started this by saying it starts with assessment. It's not only the subpopulations, what students, look at departments as well. What declared majors seem to be drifting away from that major. Some of these things, as you're pointing out, can be corrected through the curriculum. Let's get some excitement up front. If they're so career-minded, and there are some students can't wait to get into their major, let's give them a chance.
Well, we're fighting the battle with mercenaries. You know, they're hired guns, and it never turns out well in the movies or in real life, so why are we still doing that?
Who are the mercenaries? I'm sorry?
The adjuncts.
Well, you know, there was a cartoon in the Chronicle of Higher Ed about a campus where they had part-time faculty bathrooms and full-time faculty bathrooms. You know, it was like, we need to treat adjuncts, and I know this is a cost issue. There are some very dedicated adjuncts where their heart and mind is in the right place. I hope you didn't misinterpret what I'm saying. Their evaluations, course evaluations, sometimes are good as or better than, but their availability to students outside of class, which, as you know, is so important. We call them freeway flyers in California. They're trying to piece together the amount, 6, 7 courses flying from one campus to another. That's an investment. You think about what we do with first-year students, it's backwards. We herd them into the largest classes, some cases taught by teaching assistants, and I was one. You talk about mercenaries. Throw them in there to release the faculty member, like the faculty member is being released from some minimal security prison to do research without any preparation, large class size, and we want to improve first year to second year retention rates. I guess I'm just reinforcing your point. We need to get to the core courses early with some of our better instructors. This is what the National Institute of Education called front loading in the 80s. All these national reports, who read them? I don't know. But reinforcing exactly what you're saying. Thanks for your help, Ben. We are still okay on time, Aaron? Okay. Your name, your institution, and what you do.
My name is Cassandra Johnson. I am counselor at Student Support Services at the University of Kentucky. I was curious if you had any data regarding disability. We work with students who are first generation, low income, and those with disabilities. And we lose a lot of students sometimes because they find out they have a disability, but they don't want to go get help from it. So do you have any advice in regards to working with those students with disabilities? Cassandra.
First of all, how do they find out? How do they find out that they have a disability?
Sometimes they already know, and then sometimes in counseling them, they are demonstrating characteristics that they may have a disability. I'm like, have you gotten this checked out? And then some of them will go get tested, and they find they have a disability, but they won't go and take the necessary steps to take care of it.
And I didn't mean to back you up. In California, we have trouble even identifying who they are. And I don't know if this has happened in Kentucky, but those who come in with the identification and ready for special accommodations are not the low-income first-generation students. These are the wealthy students who have the wherewithal to have their students tested. And I don't want to be insensitive to learning disabilities, but in my wife's school, they call it the middle-class disease. That it seems to be the middle class and upper class that are very aware of capitalizing on all that they can do to help their students succeed. So that's on my mind. The next question, which is really your question, I don't want to make this mine. A, are they higher risk for attrition? Your experience, they are. I don't know what the national data are. Are students with learning disabilities, should that be an at-risk factor in addition to low income, academic underpreparedness, first generation? You know how we have those lists? Should disability be there? I want to stop. I don't want to do multiple questions. Let's do that first. Is Cassandra experienced? Do we have any national data? Because I thought that was part of your question. Are they more at risk? And then, of course, the second part is, what do we do for this student? Because they're going to feel stigmatized. And it's a threat. Now, you may even see some gender differences here, I would imagine, again. But what about the first question? Your experience, are you familiar with the national data on students with diagnosed, I guess, identified, and then of course those who are unidentified, I don't know how we measure that if they haven't even come forth. Can anybody help me with Cassandra's question, whether it be with hard national data or personal experience? Yes, pardon me, your name and where you are and what you do.
My name is Jim Berger.
Jim. We got I want to make sure everyone hears you, Jim. Thanks.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
My name is Jim Berger. I'm a faculty member at Western Kentucky University. And in a prior life, I worked at the Learning Disability Center at the University of Georgia. My job was as a tutor. So I don't believe I can speak to the national data.
It's okay.
But certainly from the personal experience that I had, what I found was that many of the students, about 40% of the students, I think the national data will bear this out, had concomitant issues with not only learning disabilities, but anxiety issues, ADHD, etc. And often this coincided with depression and other psychological issues. And so if you want to look at some of the questions of whether or not they are at risk, I certainly would say that they are, because if they are identified, then they're still facing these issues. And oftentimes, university or institutions don't have the structure to help them.
Fall through the cracks.
So they fall through the cracks. If they do have the structures, they still deal with those psychological and emotional issues, as well as learning issues and the stigmatization of going up to the professors and self-identifying and requesting accommodations that oftentimes aren't given because they think that we're cheating. Why should I give you those accommodations when I'm not giving this person over there the accommodation? It's not fair.
This is a faculty member talking.
Yes, yes. And so oftentimes what we had to do in the center, and lucky Georgia had that center, was we had to go and work with the student to self-advocate and oftentimes go and speak on behalf of the student. But if we weren't there, and the Disability Center doesn't fully understand the nuances of what a learning disability meant, then the student wouldn't get those services. And so, yes, I think those students are or should be considered an at-risk population, especially in the areas of retention and persistence.
Well put. Embedded in your comments, I just want to make sure the takeaways. Certainly this is a student empowerment issue. Do you have a requirement on your campus that, now we have it in California on our syllabus, we have to mention that. Now that's one thing, but it's quite another thing to actually refer to that and create a rapport in the class where a student would feel comfortable approaching you. So we have to help students to empower themselves. Also, faculty have to be, this is a faculty development issue, right?
Yes, very much so.
And thirdly, I'm going to plug the holistic thing that you said first. Here we think we've got a learning disability, but it interfaces with other elements of the self, which I think is a powerful point. Thanks. Wes, can you hustle over there, cat style? Now you're moving more like a jayhawk. Come on now, kick it on.
Another big concern with the learning disabilities is, from the faculty perspective, we're treated like...
Oh, your name, sir.
I'm sorry, Sean Kelly, Elizabethtown Community College, and I teach chemistry. And when we get the learning disability slips, we're just told what accommodations we have to make, like for some backwards troglodyte who's going to treat this person differently if we actually know the diagnosis. So we're given accommodations, but no real information for us to help them. Because if we have a student who's acting disruptive, we're going to treat them a lot differently if we know that, hey, they're autistic, as opposed to just a jerk.
Or Asperger's, have you run into some Asperger's?
Exactly. So, we need to be given the information if we're to help them and we're to retain them. And instead, we're treated like we're going to punish them or something for the disability.
Thanks, Sean. We, again, as a faculty member speaking with other faculty, sometimes we want to help, we need more support. You can't assume that we know any of this stuff. We never got it in graduate school. And we didn't get it in new faculty orientation. And I'm glad you brought it up from that perspective. I know we need to segue. I don't want to cut into the next person's time. But Cassandra had another question. Maybe I could ask advisors or sensitive professionals. Let's say you sense that there is a disability issue. Any strategies? This is the art and science, right, of giving realistic feedback, but in a positive way that will actually encourage them not to perceive this as a blow to their self-esteem, but as an opportunity to promote their success. Any strategies that you might want to, thanks. Your name, you know how I am, but I know you, but you go ahead.
My name is Gail Watts,
Gail.
and I'm a little different because I work with Kentucky adult education and not at a college or university. But about 80% of the people that we see have some kind of a learning disability, or they may not be diagnosed, but we suspect that there's something that is keeping them from learning at the rate we would expect. And I just want to say, I don't have a lot of personal experience, but one of the professional developments that initiatives that we have in Kentucky adult education is Power Path, and it's all about disabilities. It's Dr. Laura Wiesel, W-E-I-S-E-L, from Ohio. It is her program, and it's a professional development that's very intensive, where we train our instructors to do screenings for people that we feel have some kind of disability. Everything from scotopic sensitivity, and some of these things are amazing, the difference in reading of white lights on white paper, where if you just give them a filter, we've seen students all of a sudden jump levels with what they can do to read.
What's that condition again, Gail?
Scotopic sensitivity is what they call it, and there's all these colored Erlen filters that you can get. So but we screen for hearing problems, vision problems, there's surveys. And the other thing I wanted to say is part of the professional development is how to empower people to advocate for themselves.